I often hear complaints that electric cars have poor range and in general are too heavy, so even with all-wheel drive, they perform poorly off-road. How about a hybrid, which is almost electric and is pretty good off-road? This is the Nissan X-Trail e-4ORCE. Let's see how capable it is. The X-Trail is a compact crossover produced since the beginning of the 21st century, one of 3 successors to the Terrano. The first 2 generations had a boxy shape, and one could see the Terrano's off-road genes in them, but the 3rd generation resembled a blown-up Qashqai. In the States, the X-Trail was offered only in the 1st generation, then it was replaced by the Rogue, which was just plain ugly. The 2nd generation Rogue looked like the 3rd generation X-Trail, and so on. So this is the 4th gen X-Trail or the 3rd gen Rogue. Under the bonnet, don't run away screaming just yet, is a 1.5 liter 3-cylinder petrol engine, but combined with the e-4ORCE powertrain, which is a kind of hybrid where the wheels are only driven by an electric motor and the internal combustion engine is just a generator. And here to explain is James Crisp, Senior Engineer at Nissan Technical Center Europe.
So e-4ORCE works differently from a standard all-wheel drive system by having 2 motors, one on the front axle, one on the rear axle. So we have much better control over where we place the torque front and rear. And then in combination with the brake system and chassis control systems, we're able to move the torque left and right with the brakes and front and rear with the chassis control, so that we gain more control over understeer, more control over pitching, and generally, hopefully, improve the dynamic performance of the car over a conventional all-wheel drive system.
More about the e-4ORCE powertrain when we hit the road. Meanwhile, let's talk about the practical aspects of the X-Trail. After all, it's a family SUV, and we start with the boot. The Tecna version has hands-free access, and the sensors are on the corners, not in the middle. So it's almost like a Range Rover. The boot capacity is 485 liters in the 7-seat configuration and 575 liters in the 5-seater. This is a 5-seater. Most of those 575 liters is above the floor. The storage compartment under the floor is very shallow. Perhaps you can store some small bits and bobs in there, but it's not for carrying more luggage. The floor is a 2-piece job, and half of it can serve as a partition so the cargo doesn't move about. It's a pity that there are no additional hooks on this divider, like for example in a Volvo or a Range Rover. Due to the protruding cover of some hybrid drive component, the cargo cover does not fit under the floor. For what it's worth, if you run out of boot space, in the standard configuration the 2nd row of seats can slide and you have adjustable backrest angle, so you can pack a little more at the expense of legroom for passengers traveling in the rear. Before I sit in the back, 2 comments. Look how wide the door opens. That's a plus. Also, doors cover the sills, and that's also a plus, but on a rainy day, sand and mud will accumulate on the seals, so careful about that. Headroom and legroom are generous. I'm 175 centimeters tall. As I mentioned earlier, the rear seat slides forward, increasing the boot capacity at the expense of legroom. The rear seat slides very far to the front, allowing for easier access to the 3rd row in the 7-seat version. This car comes with 3-zone automatic climate control. There are also heated seats. The X-Trail has plenty of standard equipment. There are USB-A and USB-C ports in the back, the door pockets are large, as are the cup holders in the armrest. The rear seat splits 40-60, and the armrest also doubles as a ski hatch. Let's move on to the cockpit. In case you didn't notice it in the back, it's clear in the front that this is not only a new car, but also that the interior quality is excellent. While I remember the previous X-Trail, it had very hard, rough plastics. The 4th generation, everything is pleasant to touch, soft, very elegant. Piano black is limited only to a few surfaces, few details, and there are physical controls that make me feel comfortable, more comfortable than touch screens. Seat heating, click, steering wheel heating, click, windscreen heating, click, set the temperature for the rear seats, click. Now, a word of advice to other car makers who want to push subscription for features. A customer buying a car in a certain class expects certain features, and forcing them to pay extra for them at the configuration stage or as part of a later subscription may look good at first in quarterly reports, but not when the customer leaves the showroom on foot.
The door pockets are big, the dials are easy to read, buttons on the steering wheel are physical. The cup holders are clearly for American-sized drinks, which in Europe you'll find in DIY stores in the bucket aisle. The storage compartment under the armrest is generous. The glove box is average size. Although there is a wireless charger, Android Auto is wired. I'll take the cable for physical buttons. The driving position is comfortable. In the top trim version, the driver's and passenger seats are electrically adjustable with memory settings. There is also lumbar support adjustment. Both Anna and I easily find a comfortable position. I'm 175 centimeters tall, Anna is 160 centimeters. On the console, in addition to the drive selector, because the X-Trail doesn't have a transmission, there's a drive mode switch, which includes snow and off-road modes. This means I should probably do a bit more than my usual diagonal approach test.
Nissan sent me all the way to Andorra to experience the performance of the e-4ORCE powertrain on an ice track. What are its advantages? Well, here's Nissan's James Crisp to explain.
The benefit e-Power provides is it gives customers EV driving experience by not having a mechanical connection from the internal combustion engine to the wheels. So this gives us more smooth acceleration, more control over acceleration and braking. It also gives us benefit because we have more control over the internal combustion engine speed, so we can tune the car and make the car more quiet for customers, so they're more comfortable when they're driving a conventional hybrid.
And indeed, on slippery surface, the X-Trail inspires confidence. Just remember, there are no miracles. All-wheel drive systems, no matter how advanced, won't help you when all the wheels lose traction. So I decided to try out the X-Trail in more demanding conditions than my usual diagonal approach test. Now, the ground clearance on the X-Trail is between 19 and 21 centimeters, depending on the engine variant. This here is the version with the lowest 19 centimeters ground clearance.
I recently drove a Land Rover Defender here. With its trick off-road mode, it almost drove itself up the hill. In the X-Trail you have to maintain more momentum, but the e-4ORCE drivetrain really distributes torque effectively, not only between the axles but also between individual wheels. In order to get all the shots, we drove up and down several times, so this was no fluke. And finally, here's my diagonal approach test. I stop halfway, so the two wheels on the opposite corners have limited traction, and then I try to get going again. The first attempt is in normal mode. This is pedal to the metal while the system is trying to figure out what on earth is going on. The second attempt is in snow mode. In this case, even moderate acceleration yields results sooner. The car gets going with relative ease. The third attempt is in off-road mode. From the outside, it looks similar to the snow mode, but from behind the wheel, it feels even more effortless. The system distributes torque between wheels with traction with even greater efficiency. And now let's talk performance on hard surface. Nissan promises 0 to 100 km per hour in 7 seconds. I got 7.2 seconds. It was minus 2 degrees Celsius, but the road was dry.
There is a problem with low temperatures in general. More about that in a moment. First, I asked Nissan's James Crisp to explain the advantages of the e-Power, that's front-wheel drive, and e-Power e-4ORCE, which is like e-Power squared, all-wheel drive.
So in terms of the customer scenes, I think when you're driving around city, there's more benefit. As we're using electric motors to power the car, it has the same efficiency benefit in low speed or mid-speed conditions. Then in highway, we see some drop off in efficiency, but we're still very competitive in this scene as well, because we don't have a gearbox that allows us to change the ratio, unlike conventional ICE.
Let's say that with a warmed-up engine it is possible to achieve, well, maybe not the claimed 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers in the urban cycle, but 7, 8 is realistic, and around 9 liters per 100 kilometers when driving on the highway. However, we're talking about the situations in which the car covers longer distances at a time, so not 5, 6 kilometers, but maybe 15, 20 and more. The problem is that at low temperature, even if it's still above freezing, the internal combustion engine needs to warm up. So first it warms up soon after starting the car, and several times more, for example, to recharge and perhaps reheat the cold traction battery. As a result, I was getting around 10 liters per 100 kilometers in the city. Only when the engine and battery have warmed up, there is a chance to improve this result. It's probably better on warmer days, but on colder days, like during my test drive, the fuel consumption results were not optimistic. On the plus side, in city driving, the e-4ORCE does indeed provide dynamics I associate with electric-powered cars. I can't say the same about the e-power drive in the Nissan Qashqai, though. There is also the e-pedal mode, or one-pedal driving, like on other Nissan's electric models. When this mode is activated, most braking is done by energy recuperation. Just letting off the accelerator begins deceleration. This means you rarely have to use the brake pedal. However, the e-pedal feature has to be activated by the driver every time you restart the car. On the other hand, Nissan remembers the status of the auto hold function, so you don't have to activate it every time, as it is the case with most Asian cars. Another positive of the X-Trail is its dynamic handling, even on winding roads. That's something I didn't expect, so it is actually possible to stay awake behind the wheel of Nissan's family SUV. On the road, I also appreciate decent soundproofing. Visibility is not bad, and the 360 camera helps maneuvering.
On the downside, the lane keeping assist not only vibrates but also beeps, and it beeps too loud and too early. I haven't found a way just to set it to vibrate the steering wheel. The collision warning system can break unexpectedly because it thinks I'm not reacting to the vehicle braking in front of me. And on top of that, when I'm reversing into my not-so-tight gate, the car sometimes brakes violently because it thinks I'm too close to the fence. Prices of the new Nissan X-Trail start at €35,500 for the Vizia trim with a 1.5-litre petrol engine and 163 horsepower mild hybrid CVT front-wheel drive. It costs €1,500 to get into the 204 horsepower e-power front-wheel drive. The 213 e-4ORCE starts at €44,400. The third row of seats is an €800 option regardless of the trim. This test car, which is the e-4ORCE Tecna 5-seater with options, costs €55,930.
The Nissan X-Trail surprised me with its generous equipment, excellent interior finish, dynamic handling and above-average off-road capabilities. The downsides are high fuel consumption and obtrusive driver aids. To me, the pros outweigh the cons. Take this one for a test drive. And how do you like the new Nissan X-Trail? Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.